All right, let's stick with the Oz, and I'm interested in your assessment, Tim Burrowes, of how tomorrow's UK election will transpire. There's a story on the front page of The Australian that says, poll on knife edge as Tory lead plummets. There's private polling that's coming out of the Tory camp, which suggests that Corbyn is definitely narrowing the race. I mean, about a week ago we thought that Boris Johnson was headed for a pretty comfortable victory. I noticed Adam Crichton, who I've a huge regard for Adam's work, says it's hard to see how a Labor victory would do anything other than sink the pound, weaken growth and prompt investor anxiety. And in many respects, Tim, this is an election which is basically putting the young people of Britain against the middle class and the older people of Britain, because Corbyn has promised free dental, free hospitals, free this, free that, and he's talking about spending up to £100 billion on that sort of welfare. So, your thoughts?
Look, there's a lot to unpack here, isn't there, with really it is the Brexit election.
Brexit.
I think first of all we're really going to find out what the pollsters are actually worth. You know, are they worth what they're paid to actually make these calls? Because certainly all the way through they've been calling a fairly comfortable majority for Boris Johnson. But in the last sort of 24 or 48 hours, they're suggesting that the numbers are beginning to close up a bit. But certainly it feels that, you know, I think there are many voters, particularly in the middle, who find both of the options relatively unpalatable. You know, Boris Johnson, probably not a traditional Tory, got plenty of issues around trust, plenty of issues around whether he can be taken at his word. But equally, Jeremy Corbyn, you would have thought from a distance, seems almost unelectable, you know, so far to the left, some very kind of radical policies, not necessarily taking his whole party with him. You know, the indications seem to be that actually he's probably more of a Leaver than a Remainer himself, but he can't say that because he won't take his party with him. Yet his party has the policy of putting things to a referendum if they get in, which then causes Brexit to drag on for even longer, which for those who support Brexit or those who oppose it, just the likelihood of that continuing for many more months is quite a sobering thought. But equally, as we go to the last few hours of the election, you know, Boris Johnson is beginning to slip up. You know, there was that awkward incident about 24 hours ago when he wouldn't look at the photograph of the child on the floor in the hospital. In the last few hours, there's now reporting that he was doorstepped by one of the British morning TV shows fronted by Piers Morgan and ended up hiding in a fridge to avoid being interviewed live on television. So I'm sure that one's going to be quite widely reported in the coming hours. You know, you've got Piers Morgan calling him out for being a coward on Twitter in the last hour or two. So we're going to have quite a spicy final 24 hours, I think.
Yes, it wouldn't be the first time Piers Morgan has called someone out on Twitter. I think he has a love-hate relationship with Gary Lineker as well. What are your thoughts, Caleb Bond, on how this might pan out?
Well, of course, Jeremy Corbyn is an old-style, unreconstructed socialist, and that is essentially the platform he's taken to the public. And he is in his heart of hearts, a real Eurosceptic, as anyone who is a National Socialist would be. But of course, he's leading a party that believes in remaining. And most Labor voters, I suspect, would also believe in remaining, because he comes from an old style of the Labor Party. But he's leading a mob that fundamentally doesn't believe in what he believes in, and the voters who ultimately would have to entrust him as Prime Minister don't believe the same stuff that he believes. I can't see it being any other result than the Tories being in government. Whether or not they do that in a majority is what remains to be seen. I was checking the odds today, and Sportsbet is still offering $1.40 for a Conservative majority, which seems quite extraordinary. I'd be more inclined to say that we might end up with a hung parliament again. But given all the stuff we've seen with polling in the UK in the last few elections, I mean, the polling's been way off. So really, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? As you know, I'm a Bojo man. I'd like to see him win an election in his own right because, you know, at the very least, unlike Corbyn, he's not bloody boring. I mean, Corbyn has to be one of the most boring, weird leaders in politics at the moment, whereas Boris Johnson actually brings a bit of life to things, and I think he's got a bit of conviction, and it's about time they got this Brexit nonsense over and done with. Whether that be Brexit goes ahead or it doesn't go ahead, we just need to stop talking about it. It's really become their same-sex marriage in terms of taking up so much time in the political sphere that really could be spent on other issues that are genuinely more important at home. So I think the best result would be a Boris Johnson win, but you know, who knows? We'll wait and see. It's not going to be a boring election, put it that way.